So let's turn our attention to Gooseberry Season by Simon Armitage. Do, if you want to kind of make the most of these podcasts, have the poem in front of you, pencil in your hand, and be making notes, underlining, annotating as I speak. Bit of an odd poem, this one, Gooseberry Season, because it's not the kind of thing you would expect a poem to be about. Because what is it about? Well, it's about a man who comes to stay with the narrator. The narrator is the person who's speaking in the poem, the me in the first sentence, which reminds me. This man comes to stay, and he hangs around for a month. He doesn't do any work, he doesn't say thank you. And then he starts to suck up to the wife. He starts flirting with the wife, and he starts flirting with the daughter. And the man, the narrator, has had enough. So what does he do? He drowns him. He drowns him in the bath, and then he puts him in the back of a pickup truck. He drags him out into a meadow and dumps him over a border. Bit of a strange poem, as I said. And the we? Who's the we? Who helps him? My boy, the son. So what we get here is a man who comes to stay and who's the host kills him, and he drowns him with the son, and they dump the body. Doesn't seem like a likely title, a likely bit of subject matter for a poem, and I think that's what makes Armitage's poetry so accessible. We're not learning about flowers and seasons and all that sort of poetic stuff that has a very important place in the poetry canon, but for people of your age maybe is not as interesting. This is about people who murder and seem to get away with it. Strange opening though, which reminds me, we seem to come into the poem halfway through, which reminds me, someone said something. Oh, that reminds me. So we enter the poem with a question already. We notice that a theme, a link with the other two poems, both Alaska and About His Person, are both quite similar because we often end up asking more questions than we have answered. It can be quite frustrating. Don't expect ever to be able to really pin down or nail an answer to Simon Armitage's poetry, because you won't be able to. And in your essay, in your exam, please don't try and use the exam as a way of somehow discovering the truth to his poetry, because much of his poetry seems to be about how difficult it is to pin things down, and how difficult it is to pin identity down, and how hard it is to actually say what's right and wrong, and how hard it is to say whether a person is good or evil, because we're all good, we're all evil. No one really knows anybody else. We don't really know ourselves half the time. And these are the things that are explored in Armitage's poetry. So, which reminds me, he appeared at noon asking for water. He'd walked from town after losing his job, leaving a note for his wife and his brother, and locking his dog in the coal bunker. Well, that straight away sends alarm bells. This man has left his wife, and he's locked his dog in the coal bunker. So there's something wrong with the man who comes to stay straight away. But the narrator makes him a bed, and he sleeps till Monday. So the narrator invites him into his home, takes pity on him maybe, is a good Samaritan, gives him a roof over his head. We don't know why he left his wife. Maybe his wife was a dreadful woman. Maybe she abused him. We just don't know. But he's left a note for his wife and his brother, and he's locked his dog in the coal bunker. Maybe he was fed up with walking his dog. All of these are clues, but none of them are going to lead to anything. We made him a bed, and he slept till Monday. A week went by, and he hung up his coat. Then a month, not a stroke of work, a word of thanks, a farthing of rent, or a sign of him leaving. So the man comes in, gets his feet under the table, and has decided not to stay. So in the next podcast, what I'll do is I'll carry on analysing the poem. But if we just summarise by looking at that opening, strange opening, begins seemingly halfway through a sentence or halfway through a conversation, and it's about a man who is pretty awful because he leaves his wife. Or is he awful? We don't know. But all we know is he's put his feet under the table and he's come to stay, and it doesn't look like he's going anywhere.